Spirit, bless our time, speak to us, encourage us. May only truth be spoken, may only truth be heard. Amen. So, I've been pondering what is it about that video that really drew me to it. And maybe it's because we don't think of wild animals as having some of the care and sensate abilities of humans. But it's really cool seeing the mate there at the door concerned. We can see ourselves in those geese. So I want to thank Mary for that. That came to us from Mary. And so we know our pets are connected to us and to each other, but a whole lot more animals are more evolved than we can imagine. I mean, horses, whales, elephants, dolphins, gorillas, they are all sensate. They communicate with each other. They care for each other. They grieve for each other. They protect each other. If we don't kill them off with extinction, a couple of million years from now, we may be able to talk to them. We evolved, didn't we? We go back in time, we were apes. And so, you see, we forget in our exalted position that we're all family. And even the ones that aren't that far along in evolution, the ugly, scary ones, bats, bacteria, spiders, snakes. Oh, that reminds me of something. I don't like spiders and snakes, and that ain't what it takes to love me. I don't know why that came to me, sorry. Alligators, cockroaches, right? I mean, we don't feel warm and fuzzy about them, but they're still part of the life cycle, and they're needed in nature. All of nature is needed. They're part of the biosphere. And, but since the Western Industrial Revolution and the advent of early science, living things were no longer seen as divine. They were no longer seen as a part of oneness. Humans, animals, all of life being divine, a part of the Creator. They became, as the song says, things that we can use and exploit. And, you know, I hate to confess it, but when I was a little kid, there was a period where, you know, my buddies and I would take flies and pull the wings off them, right? Do crazy stuff like that. I remember when I discovered that you could burn things with a magnifying glass in the sun, you know, burning up a fly. And there's just that attitude that we grow up in, or have at least, I think it's changing, where we can just kind of do what we want with nature. We can just treat it with impunity. And so when I read the story of this donkey who was almost beaten to death by his master, it took me back to my childhood, where I read a book that became very formative in my life, and that was Black Beauty. Have you all read Black Beauty? You know, it's just a phenomenal story, and it really gripped me as a child. It had a powerful impact on me, and it's about a horse that started life as a carefree colt on an English farm with his mother, to his difficult days of pulling cabs in London, and by a wonderful twist of fate, to his happy retirement in the country. And what really grabbed me was that it was told in the voice of the animal, kind of like we heard from the donkey today. And this was told with the voice of Black Beauty, who recounts the many hardships and tales of cruelty and kindness. And so it wakened me as a young boy to the animals around me. It started to give me empathy. It changed me from seeing them as just things. And I even started leaving bugs alone, except when they bugged me. It's amazing how thoughtlessness can lead to cruelty. And it took reading Black Beauty to open my mind and heart to the fact that animals can think and feel, some more than others. And when it comes to nature and animals, the only thing worse than thoughtfulness is greed and fear, which develops false stories that make it easy to rationalize the mistreatment of nature, of animals, and the degradation of our earth and our air and our water. And of course, religion played its part. One of the theologians that helped create a terrible story was Augustine. And he was so sexually consumed with guilt and anger at women that he blamed his desires on women and blamed Eve in that story. And he saw sin everywhere, in all of nature, in animals, in people. And then Abelard, about 500 years later, added to this story of an angry God who's going to destroy the world with fire and who punished and killed Jesus so we could be forgiven. That came from Abelard. And then, after the Great Plague, that became the common story. But you see, that wasn't the story of the church for the first 1,300 years. The great cathedrals built in Europe were built before the 14th century, and they were filled with icons and pictures and paintings of not just Christian symbols, but pagan symbols. Those were our ancestors for 1,300 years. Like the Green Man, that's the face with all the vines coming out of it. And the cathedrals have pictures of animals, even animals mating. And the great theologian Thomas Aquinas, who kept this sin-based theologians at bay by emphasizing that all life forms are expressions of the Creator's existence and goodness, and that nature can teach us as much as the Bible. But after he died in the Great Plague, everything changed. People were traumatized. 1 in 3 people died. And so the church began to say, well, that's why all this is happening, because of Adam and Eve. Women are cursed, and nature's cursed. And the doctrine of original sin took root. And even to this day, if you Google Christianity, it's basically a layout of original sin. I've grown up hearing preachers say, why waste time in the environment? The world's going to be judged and destroyed by fire and recreated by God. So why would we care about the environment? I mean, that's what a good portion of Christianity is still teaching. And the fear of the plague affected science. Science became a pursuit to save humanity from nature instead of working with nature. And even to this day, they're developing compounds and chemicals that do not exist in nature, in which the long-term consequences are unknown. Do you realize that every month we ingest the equivalent of a credit card worth of plastic? No wonder cancer rates are unreal, right? That's where we've come to. I mean, you can't even go up in the Arctic and get a fresh fish out of the water where there's nobody around without being polluted by mercury from mining or from pulp and paper mills. So we've got to keep up the pressure. Keep up the pressure on politicians to value nature in dollars and cents so that any use of nature or destruction of nature will be paid before the profits. The world needs to start renting the rainforests. The rainforests are being just hacked down so that there can be plantations built, so that there can be grass for cattle. And the rainforests are the lungs of the world. So what should be happening, and there's already discussions, is that the whole world should be paying a tax that goes to the countries that have the rainforest so that the people can have more money from leaving them alone than cutting them down. I mean, doesn't that make sense? Because they're worth a whole lot more money than they're getting for them cutting them down. In Canada, get this. This is what drives me crazy. about our economic system, right? In Canada, there are 125,000 unused and orphan oil wells. It's going to cost $370 billion to remediate them and clean them up. Is it the companies who made the profits from the oil wells are going to pay that? No. Because the companies have all shut down or gone bankrupt and they just leave the oil wells. They're not supposed to. But we cannot charge the owners of the company. We cannot charge and get the profits back because companies, in the view of the law, are like a person. They limit liability so that the people who run the companies have no liability. So when a company is gone, who's stuck? Who's going to be paying the $370 billion? Well, it's going to be us, through our governments. Does that make sense to you? That companies can extract profits from nature and then leave the mess for us to clean up? And what do we hear from the corporate world all the time? Leave us alone, deregulate. We know what we're doing, trust us. They say we can't afford to have a guaranteed minimum income for people in Canada. We and the other industrialized nations spend way more money subsidizing and bailing out corporations than we spend in the poor. Have you ever thought about that? In the credit crisis, who did all the corporations and the banks go to get them bailed out? The governments. Did we say, oh no, we don't want to regulate, you guys know what you're doing, we're not going to bail you out? Oh no. We invested more money than we've ever spent on the poor. Do you know that all the fundamental technology that Apple and Microsoft and all the other great tech giants used to create their empires, do you know that all the fundamental technology was given to them and paid for by the military? And yet, they don't even pay taxes. Nature can't take it anymore. Nature's got that angel with the sword. Saying, you keep this up, you're going to die. And we see the devastating effects of global warming. All Balaam could see was the dollar signs, the money he could get if he cursed Israel. We can hear his mind working. Well, if I don't do it, somebody's going to do it. Might as well be me. And if they're cursed, I mean, really, I'm not going to do anything bad to them. It'll be their own fault. But donkey sees a lot more. Nature sees more than the human. The angel of God standing in the way, determined to not let Balaam harm people. So we could say Balaam's donkey saved his ass, or I couldn't resist it. Nature and God together will save ours too, if we stop competing with nature, if we stop just robbing nature, if we stop killing nature, if we listen to the animals and to what science is saying that Mother Nature needs. Like the donkey, God and nature have given us life, given us our lives. But if we continue to live with disrespect, blinded by greed, if we don't change direction, we will die. We will drive the higher species extinct. And we have been driving the higher species extinct. And if we don't stop, we're going to join them. But we celebrate, as people of faith, that God is not finished with creation. God didn't just create, God is still creating. God is not through with us. And this is the point that most of the Bible stories make. In our story, God gives Balaam a black beauty moment, a moment of epiphany, where he hears donkey say, "Why are you beating me? Have I ever done wrong to you?" At that moment, donkey ceases to be a thing and becomes a being. Balaam listens, and with listening comes learning. And in that opening of conscience and awareness, Balaam is finally able to see the angel of the Lord who was there to stop him from harming the Israelites. And humanity too. Spirit is at work in our world. The younger generations are going to change things. Humanity is starting to listen, starting to learn from creation. Countries are looking at new economic models that place value on land and trees and animals and air and water. We're beginning to charge for the production of carbon, which is hurting our atmosphere. The energy needs of the future will be met by working with nature's technology. The hydrogen power of the sun's nuclear explosions don't leave behind toxic fuel rods. Hydrogen releases water. That'll be the fuel of the future. And there are progressive moments in every religion, progressive movements that are reclaiming the natural world as blessed by God, to be cared for. We are beginning to recover from a God of judgment to embrace love as divinity's highest expression. As Black Beauty says in the final chapter, there is no religion without love, and people may talk as much as they like about their religion, but if it does not teach them to be good and kind to man and beast, it is all a sham. Wow, we got the religion of Black Beauty here, don't we? It's good for us to bless our pets, to take time to behold nature and to learn from her. Mother Nature has all we need to know about how to live sustainably and healthy in God's world. God in Mother Nature, like the donkey, can save us in the end.